kind of a surprise. I got a little demo of Moss Book 2 today, and yeah, it's interesting because didn't really have this on my radar for when it's coming out. I looked back at the trailers and it said spring, and then with this meeting, they're like, yeah, it's coming out on March 31st.
Really soon. Wow.
Right around the corner.
Wow. I honestly thought they would wait till like PSVR 2 maybe.
Right. But they've been working on it for a while, and it is exclusively coming out on PlayStation VR at first. Because that's the thing I didn't realize either, is that they're a tiny little team. They're like 20 people.
Oh wow, yeah, I had no idea.
And then the guy that was doing the demo and the Q&A, his name is Quill Callahan, and I think he's even like joined the team like since the first game.
Oh, okay.
But he talked about like all the lore and stuff that they've built up since then. So it's interesting because it actually was like kind of a very short demo. And then a lot more of it was Q&A, and then I had a one-on-one interview with them afterwards to find out more.
Okay.
But the basic takeaway is that the game is going to be a lot like broader and kind of more Zelda-like.
Interesting.
So they talked about seeing things that like you can't go down a certain path. You're going to need to come back with an item.
Because the first game was much more linear from what I remember.
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward.
Like room to room, essentially. Okay.
Yeah, and so one of the things that they showed was this hammer. So you get other weapons and things that you use, not just in combat, but then also like a Zelda game, you use as like kind of traversal mechanic. And one of the things that you can do with the hammer is they've added a lot more like sort of interactions between, because kind of the setup with Moss is like you have your character and then you have Quill. So you kind of control both at the same time. And so what you can do with the hammer is that you basically like charge it up. And so like, you know how you have like a little spirit bubble thing?
Yeah.
So you put the spirit bubble over the hammer, and then you create like the spirit hammer, and then Quill can go in another direction, and then you smash it. So I'll kind of like do like a co-op thing with yourself.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then that can smash things that the physical hammer can't as well.
Yeah, that sounds like I kind of like sometimes when I see games like this in VR, I think, what are they going to do in this space besides the camera perspective that makes it cool in VR? But the sense kind of reminds me of like Astrobot a little, how you would kind of interact with Astrobot himself.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things too that they talked about was, like nailing like that fixed camera thing. Like that was like really like part of the, the secret sauce of like what made the game work so well, what made it more accessible to people that normally can't get into VR. And then, and they're just kind of taking and like building on that foundation and making a bigger, broader game. They said it's like about 1.5 times the size of the first game. Okay. So like it's still not huge because it's a really short game, but you don't want a VR game to really be huge either.
Yeah, sure. So, I think the scope's probably appropriate for what they want to do with it.
And we asked them about, starting and stopping and all that, and also they said that there's like a chapter select so that you can go back to earlier chapters with your inventory and things like that. But it does sound like you'll get a fair amount of inventory over the course of the game. Yeah. And swapping out weapons to try different things. They showed, so the demo they had, they just showed like a couple of different rooms, but they showed like sort of an outdoor garden kind of area that led into like a greenhouse. And then you could see this castle up in the distance at the end.
I remember the first game did really cool stuff like that, like seeing stuff in the distance.
And then the second part was like a foundry, so it was like more mechanical, and like there was these puzzles where you had like pistons where you like push the piston down to raise Quill up. And then some of the new kind of mechanics they showed is you could take like you take your character's thing and like draw like vines, like patchwork vines to grow to create bridges for Quill.
That's cool.
Quill can actually climb walls now, like
a little more
like
mobility.
Do the Mario climb on a wall of vines, which is something they didn't have in there before. There is an enemy called a bomber who's basically like behind like this armored turret and just like lobbing these bombs out at you, and so that was one of the things that you could use a hammer on. And there's like armored beetles and things like that as well.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
So again, like having to use your weapons in both combat as well as solving puzzles. But it does feel like they put a lot of attention to detail. Like, okay, how much space do we have, and like what are you actually going to interact with in a specific room? Like, I think that's the thing about Moss that is really cool is like every room is sort of like a puzzle to solve.
Yeah, getting through it. But it sounds like you have more freedom than the first game.
Yeah,
like,
it sounds like there's like
areas you said like you couldn't get to originally.
Yeah, so you sort of backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
Like, it's not, they've done things to keep it from being tedious.
Yeah,
but
it's not like a huge open like world. Like, I don't think it's like Zelda. Like, what do you think? Like Link to the Past, the overworld, or something like that. It's not like that necessarily. It's just these like small areas that kind of connect probably, and you just can do a couple things going back between them.
Yeah, I'm curious when we actually like get to see like a full level. But I get the picture of it's more like a dungeon layout kind of thing, where it's like, okay, you go there on this path and then you find a hub and then it kind of connects over here and then you go this way and you kind of find yourself kind of crossing back and forth in different ways. They have another thing that they had kind of teased is there's this big hammer in one of the rooms, and like kind of towards the end of what they showed us, like there's this hand that just comes up and takes it. So it's like a boss or something that you're gonna come across. Some of the things that they talked about too, which was interesting, is they're gonna have more character interaction. So like getting to know other characters in this world, actually having dialogue, actually having people that have different opinions.
Oh, really?
And I don't know exactly like how that will play out in terms of like whether you're actually like making
Gameplay-wise,
choices or anything like that. But it sounds like you really have to consider like different people's perspectives. You have to like you're thrust more into a conflict rather than just wandering off alone and trying to defeat a big obvious monster.
Yeah. Is it it's Move still, right? Only?
No, use the PS4 controller.
Okay,
yeah.
I couldn't remember.
They talked about that too, how like having to keep the DualShock in front of the camera.
Right.
But they say like that since they are such an experienced team
now,
that they're they don't feel limited by being on the PS4.
Oh, nice, good.
So yeah, because I had asked about that. It's like we got all these
pretty old
much
hardware
better
now. Yeah.
VR systems now is like, but they feel comfortable and
well, it has a great art style from what I remember, so it probably helps a lot.
Yeah, one of the things that's cool too, I didn't see a lot of it, but they talked about like you remember how you would have these moments where like Quill would just kind of wave at you.
Yeah.
So they say there's more of
like
that
little
kind of little interactive.
That's cool. Yeah, I love those moments.
They say that there is kind of a recap of book 1 when you start, so you don't have to play one first, and also it's been such a long time.
Yeah.
It's been several years since the first game.
First one's great, though. Check it out.
Yeah.
Interested.
And then, I'm trying to find about some of the other things. They have, there's collectible scrolls, and then they also talked about dust as a resource.
Dust?
They didn't get into it. Like, it's like they didn't want to talk about what it's actually used
for.
So I'm curious how that mechanic will play out. That's some kind of like magic spell or some kind of upgrading your character or something. And then, they also kind of talked about how, and you got a hint of this in the first game, right? That like they have sort of this like broader arc that's like in their heads, it's in the background that where this story can go, and then with this chapter, it's like, okay, now we're gonna get into it, and they sort of figure out all the little details and the pacing and all of that. But it sounds like even beyond that, they have this broader world that's that's already sort of been written and created, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
to know that
they got it planned out.
They can draw on that stuff. Yeah. They mentioned the tone's going to be a little darker.
Oh, okay.
Which goes into what I was saying about the characters, talking about Quill having to use her powers more responsibly. Yeah, they're wanting to like really double down on what's been received well, with it. So in terms of the controls and the bond with Quill and all of that kind of thing. Oh, the library they talked about. Do you remember the library where you as a character kind of looked in?
Kind of.
On the book, and like you're kind of playing it like by flipping pages.
Yeah.
So apparently there's more story stuff going on in the library as well.
Oh, okay.
So that's a whole other side of things that'll be interesting to check out. I think that the whole thing is just like more tools, more different ways to interact and play through this game than the first one.
You feeling pretty good about it from what you've seen?
Yeah, I didn't see much, but what it was there.
Yeah, just a little taste. I liked the first game, but it's been a while, so they probably had a lot of time to refine it.
Yeah, and like you're saying, like when I look at the like VR games that I've actually gotten a chance to play, and it's obviously not a long list, but it's like I probably have like Half-Life Alyx and then Astrobot, and then Moss is pretty close behind.
Yeah,
Moss. I know there's stuff like Beat Saber and all that, but in terms of like kind of my tastes, yeah, I'd probably put Moss above the Psychonauts game.
Yeah, totally.
It's a really cool game.
Yeah, I really liked Moss, so I'm excited to play this.
Yeah.
I had no idea it was coming out so soon.
Who knows? Maybe by the time you see this, I'll have a review code and start on it. But
it looks cool.
Yeah, so look forward to that in just a couple weeks.